So thank you for being here and coming out and inviting me down. And before I start, I'd like Susan, the love of my life, to lead us in a prayer to invite Spirit to join us.
Where two or more are gathered, there am I also. So says Michael, our Spirit of Truth. So would you close your eyes? And just imagine the Spirit of Truth in this room, because He is. And also feel the breath and the love of the Mother Spirit that is definitely here with us. And the angels are clapping because we've come together once again. And our thought adjusters, let's acknowledge each and every one of them and the amazing spiritual influences that are in this room with us right now. And I ask that we give our wills and our minds and our hearts over to them so that we can learn something new. Maybe a new concept, a new perception. And I ask them to guide my Tom in his talk, and that he touch your hearts as well as your mind. I also ask for blessings and peace on every one of you, because on this planet it's a very difficult life that we live, right? So blessings to you all. And I turn you over to my sweetheart.
Always a troublemaker, Larry. Mark, did you? Okay, on the table in front, well, I just
push it on the pad, it'll come up.
Okay. I like that.
Does it come up on the screen in front of you?
No, not yet.
Move your finger around on the pad.
Okay. You have a password? You just tap it?
Okay, hang on.
So, real quick, on the table in front of you, there's a couple of handouts. And one of the handouts is what has turned into my favorite parable. And it's the parable of the household. And I think, for me, it brings a sense of wholeness. A sense of cooperation, a sense of having the opportunity.
The mic so we can catch it on video.
Of having the opportunity to share my life with God more fully. It doesn't matter when we come to work. And I'm leaving that out there for you to read. It may be of value to you. On the other handout are some quotes that I find important. And I'm going to start, the one that I want to start with is here somewhere.
Is that it?
No, that would be the first. That would be the first quote once I get going, because it's real important that we understand our relationship, our living relationship with Spirit. Whether it's the local universe Mother Spirit, the Infinite Spirit, whatever you want to call her, whether it's the Spirit of Truth, or whether it's the Spirit of God within us. There are opportunities, and we're given a lot of information about how we touch bases with those. I'm not ready to go there. Where I'd like to go is on your handout. I think this is like starting at the end. And then I'll, where are we? On the last page, upper left-hand corner, there's a quote, and I'll read the quote. Let all humankind benefit from the overflow of your loving spiritual ministry, enlightening intellectual communion, and uplifting social service. But none of these humanitarian labors, nor all of them, should be permitted to take the place of proclaiming the gospel. And that is what we'll end with, but I want you thinking about that as we move towards it. What I'm going to talk about is not mutually exclusive. We have this thing where in the movement from time to time we have the intellectuals and we have the people that are too spiritual and the people that are this or the people that are that. And the bottom line is we're supposed to be about all those things. We're supposed to be about our own personal spiritual growth. We're supposed to. How do you do that? What do you do to get closer to God in your lives? We're supposed to be about enlightened intellectual communion, learning more about God, the way the universe is run. We're supposed to be doing that. And social service, over and over and over again. I've got, afterwards, if you want to give me your email, I'll send you quotes out of the Urantia book by the bushel that have to do with service, that have to do with forgiveness, that have to do with peacemaking, and that have to do with learning to love. And it's a process. It's not something that just happens. None of it is. So all of these things we should be doing. If I'm a hardcore student of the Urantia book or I'm teaching a class in something, it does not mean that I can't be working to get closer to God in my own personal life. So it's a lot more holistic, and what I thought I would do is I would talk to you a little bit about my journey, just a touch about my journey. And it starts in 1970. It starts in 1970. I was, the Urantia book found me, and I would venture to say that the Urantia book found every one of you. I don't think any of you found the Urantia book. The book found you when you were ready for it. Without any advertising, without any internet, with only 27 book chains or stores that carried the Urantia book, it found you. It found every one of us. In the late 60s, early 70s, 1,000 of us came pouring out of the woodwork that had been found by the book. And we grabbed onto that book and we went, wow. And it changed our lives. It gave us the most incredible community we've ever been a part of or ever will be a part of, ever. Sometimes we take advantage of that, sometimes we don't. But we are brothers and sisters of the revelation. I've come to distinguish the difference between believing in the revelation and being a faith daughter or son of the revelation. So I will start with my journey and try not to get too sidetracked. Each of those quotes, by the way, if you look at them, we can do a question and answer about them. I was talking to David a little earlier, and I said, you know, when I first got involved in this, I was studying the Course in Miracles, Seth Speaks, Astara, you know, the whole gambit of New Age material. And I had the Urantia book presented to me by a very close friend and spiritual mentor, Patty and Tucky Hayes, and I grew up together in Alaska for a long time. And she gave it to us. We'd been studying these other things, and we opened it and read about Adamson and Rada and the Invisible Children, and just about died laughing and trying to figure out what was this about. This is ridiculous, right? Who's making the money here? Don't have the slightest idea. Had zero opinion of the Urantia book other than negative. 6 weeks later, I'm in the bookstore and I walk by the metaphysical section and there's a Urantia book there, and I look at it and laugh. I just chuckle. I walk by it, I get a couple other books, walk by it again, chuckle. I'm in line at the cash register and I keep looking back at it. And I ended up walking back there, grabbing the book and buying it. I think it was $12. And it changed my life in many ways. You have changed my life. You have been a part of my life that grows me and makes me more. So, but this happened because I found the Urantia book. So it was real important to me to get the Urantia book out. Got to get this book out. Look what this book has done to me. Look what it has done to those around me, other readers. And I got so focused on it that even when the occasional person would say, you know, this really isn't just about the Urantia book, this is about becoming so spiritual that people gather outside your door to ask where you get that fragrance. People stop you on the street, and I poo-pawed that, and I said, hey, I didn't find the Urantia book because somebody was being super spiritual. I found the Urantia book, and so I dedicated my life to starting organizations. We seeded, under Shepherd, seeded Urantia books all across the Pacific Rim. We took them to Korea, Japan, Tahiti, Fiji, Australia, New Zealand. We had the first prison. We sent, Marion Rowley got a hold of us, and we'd send books to all the prisons. We had prisoners come up and live with us once they got out, which was almost a disaster. But we just worked on getting the book out. Important to get the book out. I helped found 2 societies, 3 study groups, one of them still going today. Went through with my study group a little over 4 readings in 18 years. We had read through the Urantia book from front to start, went to fairs, had booths, pushing the Urantia book. Pushing the Urantia book, setting the Urantia book out in front of us, always. In 1989, I'd been reading the book for almost 19 years. I had a friend of mine ask me if I'd come down and help him work with street kids in the University District. And I didn't even need to answer that. I'd already judged these losers. Living on the street. What are you talking about? And Tom stuck with me. He said, Tom, come on down. I want you to work with me. We're setting up this organization that's going to feed these kids every night in different churches. And so I went down there. And I was in the back fixing food, but the back was from here to Pierre. So I could watch these subhumans come by, right? 4.5 times we'd read through the Urantia book as a group, and several special topic, and just by myself. And I already had condemned and judged every kid that came into that room. And they were vulgar, they stunk, they weren't grateful, no one said thank you. There were over 200 of them. They stunk up the room, they didn't pick up for themselves. And when they left, there was this huge mess we had to clean up. I clean it up. Tom's a Urantia head also. And we're driving home, and Tom goes, Tom, what do you think? What do you think about this, helping these kids? And I said, you don't want to know what I think. And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, I think it's a total waste of time. I think what these kids need is a swift kick in the ass and a job. And you're enabling them, you're pampering them. 18 years of reading the Urantia book, of promoting the Urantia book. Maybe you guys can't relate to it, but I said that was enough. You know, it wasn't my ministry, it was his ministry. My ministry was getting a book out. And so the next week, the phone rings, it's Tom, and he goes, hey, we're short some people, I need your help. And I go, Tom, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do it. And he goes, come on, Tom, just one more time. And I go, no, I appreciate your ministry, but this isn't mine. 25 minutes later, the doorbell rings, and it's Tom. And he came over to pick me up. And he took me down. And I said, okay, this is it, though. This is the last time. He said, sure. And he put me on the front lines. So now I could smell them as well as see the the metal and the spiked hair and the dirty clothes and the crust. Yeah. And they're going through, and I'm the guy that puts the roll on their tray. And I'm just counting the minutes. And this little thing, maybe this tall, with a hood up, comes through the line. And I put a roll on her plate, and I hear, "Thank you." And I looked down, kind of the way I am, and I said, "Whoa, I just got a thank you." And she looked up at me, and she had tears running down her eyes, and she was maybe 13, maybe 12, maybe 11. Clean clothes, just hit the street, you know. And the kids and some of the adults laughed, and from then on, everybody started saying thank you. To make a long story short, I fell in love with those kids. I spent lots of time on the street working with those kids. And that was the beginning of my spiritual education. So to me, doing service, doing social service is what got it for me, is what kind of lit my fire. And then we started, if you work with the street kids long enough, you realize there's not much hope. These young people that run to the street, they're there, they're going to get raped, they're going to get robbed, they're going to get beat up, boys and girls both. When you run to the street, you're running away from something that is horrendous at home. And what they're finding on the street isn't much better, but they don't go back home, even those that can. And so we decided, how can we help these kids? And we started training advocates and creating a ton of opportunities for people to come and start working for them. Didn't happen. People are too busy. People will give you Bibles, they'll give you books, they'll give you money, they'll give you backpacks, socks, sweatshirts. They'll give you material stuff, but these kids need people that love them. That's the only way they're going to transform out of this hell that they're in. And we realized we could not get adults to come in and advocate for them once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. And this was a bunch of ranchettes. There were a lot of us working on it. And so we decided to buy a duplex and create a shelter called Teen Hope. And what we would do is, before the explosion happened in the home, before they run to the street, we'll get a hold of them, set up a mediation program, try to help heal the family. For whatever reasons, that didn't work. We worked on that for about 5 years. Went through a couple of other organizations trying to touch people, and came to the conclusion that adults are not capable of helping these young people. Now, that's not a bad thing. We're busy. We don't want these kids really brushing shoulders with our kids because they smoke and they swear. And we don't want, there are good reasons, a ton of good reasons why adults don't have the time. They're busy with their own lives. So what we did is we started to look for a way to help kids help kids. How can they help themselves? And that's the genesis of Truth Seekers. That's the genesis of Truth Seekers. I got together with Fred Harris and Judy Langston and Laura Collins, and we've worked with a bunch of great educators and stuff, and we just put all of it out of the Urantia book, without talking about the Urantia book. But the seeds of the revelation that are in there, to put them in a format that were attractive to young people. And with Norman and Nate, the double N's, welcome. Good to have you here. Was it a long swim in? I thought you guys were on a boat in the Pacific.
That's tomorrow.
Ah.
Talk about kids on the street.
Right. Nate's awesome. So, in putting together Truth Seekers, we took a pattern out of the Urantia book. How young people, they have no self-esteem. They're lost. They're hurting as far as developing character goes. What do they do? How do they do it? So we started asking questions, not just within kids in the movement, but kids outside of the movement. What do you value? What has value to you? Why? How do you work that into your life? How do you become more of what it is you really feel in your heart? What kind of work does it take? And we put together an incredible program called Truth Seekers. And Truth Seekers has a program called Parenting for Values, which Bill and Kay Cooper and a group of people have worked really hard on. And it's from birth to about 6 years old. And then we have Families That Love, the acronym of LOVE, Living Our Values Every Day, the acronym of LOVE, Living Our Values Every Day, which is a program from about 7 to about 13 or 14. And then we have Truth Seekers, which is about 15 to 155, as it turns out. And but we zeroed in on these young people, things they need to do to feel better about themselves, help others, but we get into a way they can do that real easy in their environment. Forgive yourselves. If you don't forgive yourselves, you're not going to be capable of forgiving anybody else, and it's important you forgive yourself no matter what you've done. So we got into service, big service. Get outside of yourself, help somebody else, forgive. Become peacemakers amongst yourselves, and love. It's important that you love. To them, it's but it's love. So we went into the Urantia book, and for the first time, I pulled all the references on meanings and values, and found out that the real values visit us when the adjuster comes to us. The supreme values that are what love is. It's what God's is. Their gift to us when they join us is to teach us how to be compassionate and forgiving and kind and loyal and respectful and sincere, and the list goes on. The fruits of the Spirit, you can shake them and bake them, divide them up. And what happened in working with these kids is we realized that when we first asked them, what are values you'd like to adopt in your life, they had the hardest time. This took us a while. None of this stuff happened overnight. They'd say things like, well, geez, I don't know. And we'd go, well, how about honesty? And they'd go, yeah, honesty. There's something wrong with me having to pick a value for someone. And then we'd go, well, what about sincerity? Yeah. What about compassion? Yeah. Loyalty? Yeah. And we finally said, you're not picking your values. I'm picking your values for you. What's the deal? And we had one guy, he said, Tom, I'd like to be honest, but I just stole money from my mom. I'm messing around with my best friend's girlfriend. I lie. And what happened is we realized that we needed to give these kids permission to fail. Because when you pick honesty, you're not automatically successful. Guarantee, I'm still working on it. And I've been working on it hardcore. So honesty becomes real interesting when you're partnership with God. Real interesting. So the idea is we went, okay, what are some values you'd like to have in your friends? Ha! Bam! They had dozens of values their friends better have. And so we took the program and moved it around. Well, it's okay, they're going to fail, and that's okay. You got to stick with them. You got to help them. You got to encourage them to make better decisions. And once they realize that, they realize they could do that for themselves. So we're going along. We've got this pretty neat program going, and Susan's joined us by then. And at the one board meeting we were having, I said, because we put together a pretty awesome curriculum. If you look under tsquest.org or .com, you'll find one of our mini journals. We're making it, trying to make it better all the time. But I asked the board, I said, has anybody here done the curriculum? Has anybody done the curriculum that we're asking these kids to do? And none of us had. In theory, it was a wonderful curriculum. We knocked it out of the ballpark. We'd keep high-fiving. This is great. But none of us had tried it. So I invited the whole board to try it, but I decided I was going to try it. I was going to see if this was available, if there was something that I could tap into that would make me more than what I am. And I started adopting values. I started adopting values that came out of the love of God for us, that abide within us, that are waiting for us to say, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that. I used to think fruits of the Spirit, heck, if you served or if you just prayed enough or went through the rosary or meditated enough, bam, the fruits of the Spirit would just start building up in you automatically. It's never worked for me. I doubt it's worked for any of you. It's work. It's work in two areas. One, it's hard to correct yourself a lot, and you find yourself doing that a bunch. And two, it's hard to give up control, isn't it? That's where faith comes in. I got to give it over to God. As long as I think I can do it, I'll do it. But I'm not going to get very far. And that's a free will choice. One of if everybody just take a moment, spiritual development depends first on the maintenance of a living spiritual connection with true spiritual forces, and second, on the continuous bearing of spiritual fruit, yielding the ministry to one's brothers and sisters of that which has been received from one's spiritual benefactors. I'm sure everybody in this room is aware of the fact that you would not be able to forgive if the Spirit of truth did not live within you. Impossible. We're told at Pentecost, man was endowed with the ability to forgive personal harm. Whoa. What happened to Spirit at Pentecost? The Spirit of truth came. Several references in the book, the Spirit of truth introduces us, partners with us, and allows us to not only forgive, but to promote peace in others. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, because he knew to be a peacemaker, you already have got to have dealt with forgiveness. You cannot, without being a hypocrite, ask others to forgive, to make space, to allow, to repair, to grow, if you're holding on to grudges and feelings. And we have a helper. You know, there's a quote in the Ranch book that says that if your mind does not serve you well, trade it in for the master's mind. You know, for 30-some years, I laughed at that. I didn't laugh, I just thought, that's for the people that have to trade it in, right? The ones that can't get their act together. I was satisfied going through my life for over 40 years, maybe 50, with this old beat-up Volkswagen that I called my own, when just a choice away, I could have turned that into a Rolls Royce with an eternal warranty. But I didn't need to do that. That was for the other people, right? When you love, you are not capable, none of us are capable of loving without God. God is love. Those values that come with our adjuster from the Supreme, that's love. And we think God's so far away. Even your Urantia book readers will think that, well, God's not concerned, or God's not involved directly in my life, or God this or God that. But the fact of the matter is, if you're ever kind, you're kind because God is partnering with you. If you're compassionate, if you're loyal, if you're selfless, if you're forgiving, that's the Father working through you. He's well aware of it. And I didn't get that until I started adopting values and letting it change my life. And then you start running into the old man. You go, whoa, it's interesting, Haven't had Spirit ever tell me to tell anybody else what to do in their personal lives. But you start opening the channels for Spirit to love on you a little bit. So, to get back, I'm getting sidetracked, which I do from time to time. So, truth seekers. So, truth seekers got us to thinking about, how do we get closer to God? How do we turn our lives over to God? Because Truth Seekers was fairly secular. We did it in schools. We did it in community centers. And we couldn't use the word God, right? But without, and that's okay. If you send somebody looking for love, you know who they're going to run into? Anybody have any idea? If you go looking for love, who you're going to run into? You're going to run into God. Absolutely. So we decided to work on a program called I Will Love. It's just a declaration that says I will love. It's a commitment. I'm going to love. We have a revelation. Do you know how bad it is out there in the world? Our world is falling apart. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, we went into the I Will Love program, and anybody that does the I Will Love program will develop a strong personal relationship with God. Absolutely. And this pattern comes out of the Urantia book. And I can give a pamphlet, an I Will Love pamphlet, to somebody, and they grab onto it and they read it, and they'll look me up or grab me the next time they see me and say, whoa, and they got questions. I'm not saying we don't quit handing out the Urantia book. I'm just saying, in my own personal experience, I can touch people with the grace of God every day by the dozens without mentioning the Urantia book. Does that mean that I think we shouldn't study it? No. That we shouldn't translate it? No. That we shouldn't work our minds to grow a greater respect and amazement of our incredible creative powers? No. But we can do all of it. We can do all of it. So, how many people, if I look at this room, maybe 1,000 years of reading the Urantia book? The collective wisdom here in this room, 1,000 years of reading the Urantia book. I'm 40-some, and I mean, we start multiplying that out by however many. Lots of reading the Urantia book, and that's a wonderful thing. Do you know the rest of the world hasn't had that? They do not have that luxury to know what's happening. They don't. And if you get out there and just start talking to them, don't hand them a book, talk to them. Talk to them about where they're coming from. Talk to them about what their fears are, what type of pain they're going through, what kind of separation they have, how delicate their faith is. Whew, it's a smorgasbord out there. So what happens is, when we got into I Will Love, we stumbled in. That isn't it. Okay, it's the one about proclaiming the gospel. Proclaiming the gospel. That's almost a horror phrase for a lot of us. It's like proclaiming. We don't really like the word gospel. What is the gospel? What is the gospel? We have all these reasons for taking it and setting it aside. Do you know 7 of Jesus' 19 appearances were to believers? In his 19 appearances, his number 1 message was proclaim the gospel. It's really important to me. I'm coming back from having left you, and I'm not telling you to eat blueberry cupcakes. I'm not telling you to drive a Mercedes. What I'm telling you I need is for you to proclaim the gospel. Does that mean we quit reading the Urantia book? No. Studying it, handing it out, translating it? No. This is the one thing Jesus asks us to do. And the quote, people go, well, that's the apostles. That's the apostles he required that of. Wrong. 7 of his appearances didn't include the apostles. They were the believers, the Greeks, the Samaritans, the Jews, different groups that he appeared to. He asked them to do one thing. He's asking us to do that. It's not easy at first. It's thrilling beyond measure if you get into it. How do I get up on a soapbox? Huh? Do I ask people if they're saved, brother? Do I try to knock somebody out by hitting them in the forehead? Do I threaten them? What do I do? 2.5 years ago, I started interviewing people on the street. And I'd come up to them and I would say, I'd like to ask you a question. I'm doing some interviews. Do you mind if I ask you a question? I've never had one person say no. And I ask them, what is your greatest need? They go, well, what do you, I said, no qualifications. What is your greatest need? The mid-90 percentile haven't the slightest idea what their greatest need is. They haven't thought about it much. They might, better relationship with my wife, better job, more money, better relationship with my family, better sex. It's interesting. You get all sorts of these things, and I just sit and I listen. And when they're done, they'll invariably look at me and go, I really don't know. I haven't thought about it much. What's your greatest need? The moment somebody can ask me what my greatest need is, I can give them the gospel. And I go, well, to me, my greatest need is to love and be loved. I wouldn't give that up for any amount of money. No matter how big a house I could get or how many friends I can have, I would not give that up. Everybody agrees with it. Across the board, you might have one that doesn't or 2. And they'll go, well, yeah, of course. And I'll go, okay, that brings me into my second question for you. What is love? We know what love is, don't we? We've been studying the Urantia book for 30, 40, 50 years. We know what love is. These people don't know what love is. And if you cannot define love, you cannot grow love. It's impossible. People will say, it's different for everybody. Love's different for everybody. And it's impossible to explain. Cool. I just listen. I might ask them a few questions. Love is how I feel for my partner. Love is passion. Love is dependence. There's a lot of things that come out, and I'm silent until they finally ask me, what do you think love is? And I say, I think love is simply the way you make me feel when I'm feeling the love. And it's the way I make you feel when you're feeling the love. Are you feeling the love if I'm being kind or cruel? Are you feeling the love if I'm being sarcastic or sincere? Are you feeling the love if I'm being honest or lying to you? It becomes self-evident And everyone will go, wow, yeah. Now we got a foundation we can start from. And I'll go, it's important to define love, because if we define it, and if it's what everybody needs, it's what all your friends and the people you want to be friends with, if that's what they need, and you become a transmitter of that, you become more kind, more patient, more forgiving, more loving, you're going to become very attractive. And then I say, you know what I think? Since everybody in the world's greatest need is to love and be loved, that we have a lover that lives inside of us, that we have a creative parent that not only created us and the world, but is the very source of that love. And if you have faith in that, if you just open your mind to that possibility, miracles will happen in your life. I probably am not going to see 95% of the people I share the gospel with ever again. But Jesus, he didn't, there's a quote here that says, all these quotes are relevant, by the way. I'm not going to get into all of them. But all these quotes are super relevant as far as things that we can do to partner with God. The quote I'm looking for, I love being older. It is, but I want to talk about how my mind works now. My mind, have you ever seen those boxes where you have two little handles? Little knobs, and it tilts, and you're trying to get this steely past all these holes. That's how my mind works now. I start with a concept, boom, I try to stay on track, but it just disappears. You're going to have to bear with me. It's the quote on love,
Well, we love you, so we're very good.
Pardon?
We love you, so we're very
Yeah. The quote on love says, if you can't do anything else, if the limit of your abilities is to love one more person each day, you need to do that. Pardon? I've got hearing aids in, Norman, but I still can't hear you very well.
He said or two.
Or two. Yes. This I'll read. Thank you, Donna. It is not so important to love all people today as it is that each day you learn to love one more person. If each day or each week you achieve an understanding of one more person, and if this is the limit of your ability, then you are certainly socializing and truly spiritualizing your personality. We have lots of workshops on personality. Even though we're told we're never going to understand it, we do our workshops on it. Here's something that's telling us that if we want, to touch up, snuggle up, grow into that personality, we should probably be learning how to love one more person every day as a minimum. When I first read this 40 years ago, 50 years ago, however long it was, I thought, okay, that's for the apostles. There's no way. I meet one guy, I bring him home, introduce him to the family, we have him over for dinner, get to know him a little bit. The next day I do the same thing. Pretty soon at Thanksgiving I have 287 new people coming over because I got to get to know them and love them, right? How do you love somebody? How do you love somebody in the moment and without having to bring them completely into your life? And when I started to proclaim the gospel, I realized how you do that. You just love them. Sincerity, and more sincerity. You partner with God. Keep in mind, I can't love anyone without partnering with God. It's impossible. So as I cuddle up next to God and I allow God to love through me, I can love more than one person a day. I can love more than 5. And that's what we're being asked to do. In the gospel, we're not asked to become good friends. All we're asking, all Jesus is asking is, I want you to share this information, the information that Jesus has, which is real simple. And you can reverse it any way you want, fatherhood of God, brotherhood of man. By faith alone you're saved. God is love. You can start adding a few things here and there, but it's simple. Jesus' gospel is simple, real simple. So the idea is, in the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes I spend with one person, when I walk away, that person's thought adjuster, the Spirit of truth, the adjutants, the Holy Spirit, are doing cartwheels because every one of them is thinking about the possibility of what love is. Their mind has been opened, and now it's up to our spiritual mentors, because for the first time somebody's probably saying, I have people come up, if you ever start doing it, incredible things start happening. But the idea is they start opening their mind to the possibility that they can love. And that there's a source of that love in them. Maybe, maybe not, but they're opening their minds. The moment, we're free will creatures, the moment they open their minds, we got them. Spirit got them. Isn't our job anymore. So there's a journey that I kind of wanted to leave you, that's led me at 66 years old to proclaim the gospel. And the reason I do it with relish is because of this wonderful parable that says it doesn't matter how late I'm coming to this particular request of our master. And I will touch on one other thing that I've touched on before that's important. To our master, to the creative brother of our universe, he came back 19 times. And the most important message he had to believer and apostle alike: proclaim my gospel. Now, over there on the little table, there are some necklaces that we call the infinity heart. And that's when you attach a meaning and a value. Values are just a theory, and we don't come up with them. There's several quotes about it, but let's say we want to work on a value. This is important. So, am I over talking here, Phil? Okay. Meanings and values are attached together. There's real complex workshops on it. Let me bring it home real easy. First of all, a value is something that's presented to me by the Spirit. A true value I don't make up, I don't figure out. And it becomes a theory, like the alcoholic that goes, I'm going to try not drinking, and maybe my life will get straightened around. It's a theory. When we adopt a value, it's a theory. I'm going to try being honest. But let's go with service. Haven't served much. I'm going to serve. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I'm going to serve. So the value service, and the meaning behind value is, hey, we're moving in that direction. That's got a lot of meaning. That's maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do, is move in that direction. So you start serving others, and I guarantee you, the first thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to be feeling better about yourself. Value is still service, but now I'm feeling better about it. Something's added to that. The meaning has changed. If I keep doing it, I start to realize that the people I'm touching, their lives are changing. I'm making their life better. Well, that's another little meaning change, isn't it? And as that meaning changes, the value changes. And then if I continue to do it, I realize I'm making the community better by what I'm doing. And if I continue to do it, I realize that instead of having to do it, I look at the change it's done in me and I celebrate. And if I keep doing it, I realize the privilege of service. Not that I have to do it, but the privilege. That's still the same value, isn't it? Service. But the meaning has changed. And because God is infinite, those meanings change infinitely. I don't even know what we're going to be doing in a billion years, but we're going to be growing service in marvelously new ways. So the infinity heart is a symbol that represents our commitment to grow in love. I wore one for a week and didn't get a comment on it, so I decided, okay, men wearing it might be a little strange. But you're welcome to wear it if you like. But the women in this room, if you want to make, there's a little card in that, and it's a commitment you're making. It's a commitment to grow in grace, to turn your life over to love. And if you'd like to do that, Susan and I would like to gift you with a heart. To the men, there is some truth seeker pendants. You know, we used to be able to give these out, but Arlie Grubb passed away, and about 3 years before he passed away, he got to shaking too hard to make them for us. So we found a place, so we've got them again. But the Truth Seeker's pledge is, I commit myself to a lifelong search for truth. To the best of my abilities, I will be a living example of the truths that I find, and I will honor all other truths, realizing there are as many paths to truth as there are seekers to walk them. And we would like to, if you run out before you get one and you'd like one, you just let us know. So there's a commitment to it, you know, with the cross and the concentric circles. It's a commitment to search out and live your truth, live God's truth. Thank you for having me speak massively in love and planning on growing in love with all of you more and more. The world needs you. The world needs you. The world is in our country. Forget the world. Our country doesn't even know what love is. Our country is so separated from God, even in their belief, that we're drifting. And you guys have the answer. Each one of you has the answer. You've had it for decades, so have I. And what I'm saying is handing them a Urantia book isn't going to do it. It doesn't mean we don't get them out. I've done that. I've been there. And I'll continue to support any translations, anything anybody's doing on that. But what's needed most is the gospel of Jesus. And we're the only group on this planet that has an unadulterated, unfiltered, powerful, dynamic gospel of the Master. Thank you.
Wow, have we ever been gifted with a gifted teacher in our midst? So we're going to have, I hope you'll be here for questions and discussion.
Certainly.
Oh, wonderful. There's some dessert there to help yourself with, and we will continue on with as long as you can stand it.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. This is wonderful. Yeah. Looking
Well,
for
then,
a room. Yeah.
if you need to take a break.
Actually, Christy put her hand up first. If you grab Christy over here, I've paid her to ask good questions.
You may be sorry if I with my question. No, because I'm not as familiar as the rest of you are here. So when you say the gospel, is that a specific citing within the Urantia book? What are you saying is the gospel?
You know, the Urantia book tells us that the gospel is. The Urantia book tells us that the gospel is nothing more or less than teaching friendship with God. So the gospel, I was talking to several friends in the movement, and they thought that proclaiming the gospel, you didn't have to use words. You could just live it. And so we had a group of almost 40 people that we spent 3 days going through several aspects of the gospel, all hardcore Urantia book readers in Kansas City. Susan put it together. And we had a wonderful time. And I'm going to be getting all of the stuff that we discussed and went through. And we're going to be doing this every 6 months in different parts of the country. But the concept of the proclaiming the gospel is living it. The more powerful we are at living it while we're proclaiming it, the better we're going to be at it. But it takes words. And so the gospel, all of us have a more or less interesting perspective on this gospel. You know, I didn't like it. Growing up a Christian gospel type stuff. It's used in the fifth epical revelation all the time, especially in Jesus' part. He talks about the gospel, and that's what he wants us to be doing. So, but when you break that down, it's a simple message. And the message is that there is a supreme creative force, a God, an Allah, a Krishna, that has put this incredible journey together for all of us, that we are all brothers and sisters. And that its core value is love. If somebody has that, they've got enough of whatever the gospel is. They can continue on doing whatever. As far as we tried to proclaim the gospel without using words. There were two of us that came up and we started pantomiming. And decided that, yeah, maybe it was important to use words. And there's just a delightful amount of simple words that you can use. And our don't contend, Jesus said, don't contend. I don't argue with anybody. When I share, well, I'm sorry, I'm getting off of it. So the gospel is a message of, of everything, of hope, salvation, which is a horrible word. You know, for a lot of people, oh, what do you mean salvation? That means there's a hell. Has nothing to do with that. Thank you, David. But, pardon? I have a slide on it.
I'm gonna read it.
Okay, would you please? People can read these, yeah.
In preaching the gospel of the kingdom, you are simply teaching friendship with God. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Quick question. Jesus kept saying the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Now, is that part of the gospel, or did I?
You know, there are, when you look through, absolutely it is. And we're also told to take it and put it into modern phraseology. To me, God is a very Christian word. So I try to put it in a format, even in a Christian environment, so I don't offend other children of God. What I found is that if I were to take Allah, and in front of a bunch of Christians, I start using the word Allah, which is just a name, another name for God. It's very powerful. Then people have a tendency to move away, shut you off. They're not into listening to the message. So we've taken just about every concept of the gospel, and there aren't very many. There aren't very many. If you take a look at Jesus' 19 appearances after he left the planet, you get very simply. And Jesus, yeah, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just say talk in the microphone so we can capture it. Please go ahead.
Right. You know, there are people talk about God being love as part of the gospel. It's really not part of the gospel, but it's a part of the gospel that I add because God is love. And if you go and search for love, you're going to find God.
Other question for Tom? Thank you.
So most of your Urantia book readers, if you were to ask them their definition of the word love, and I'm in complete agreement with your estimate that most people outside of our organization and even within our organization are a little bit confused about the word love. And if you ask people what's the most popular quote about love, first thing that comes to mind is love is the desire to do good to others, right? There's a subtlety within this quote that I'd like to just bring up, and it is that the Urantia book is trying to teach us that love is the desire to do good to others. The quote does not say love is doing good to others. So there's a subtle difference in between the desire, which is an allure, and an intention, as opposed to creating that actual service, which most of us hold in our interpretation of the word love prior to studying the fifth epical revelation as a grandiose feeling. And I think that's what most people can buckle it down to. In fact, you did the same when you had said, love to me is what I feel when you're loving me, and vice versa. And so that captures love within a specific definition of feeling and completely individualistic to each person. But what I'm suggesting that we might miss, or at least like to investigate as individuals, is to what does that desire, why is that the word desire within that quote? And how does that allure adjust our own interpretations of the word love? So I don't know if you'd like to speak about that at all, Tom, about it's as if the revelators are trying to get us to redefine that word because it's so grotesquely used and so misinterpreted.
Yeah, thank you, David. I go ahead.
Your talk.
Microphone here. We'll catch it on the tape. Go ahead.
But it reminded me of something I heard on the way in. One of our favorite artists, one of the more spiritual ones from the 20th century, Stevie Wonder. And you know, I didn't remember he did the song, but it's Love's in Need of Love Today. It's just a beautiful rendition. I listened to that, and I haven't heard that in a long time.
What is it again?
Love's in Need of Love Today. Yeah, Stevie, you don't normally hear it.
Sing it.
Yeah. I can sing it for you. But then this guy cut me off and I flipped him off.
Thank you.
Here, I'll take it. Other question for Tom? Marlene? You're next.
I just wanted to say, Tom, that I really am pleased that you gave this talk today. To me, the easiest gospel I can do in my whole life, I found it. Anyone I see, I don't care, like I've said over and over in this group, if I see someone, I look them right in the eyes and I say, how are you? How are you today? And I wait for them to answer, and then that gives me time to explain to them how beautiful they are and how important they are and how glad I am that I met them, and, you know, have a wonderful day or life. And sometimes they'll stop right in the middle of it. I've had a lot of this in my life. I brought a lot of them home too. But in my life, and just daily passing, anywhere. My people that come to my door to deliver to Pierre all day, for instance, I always give them a wonderful, I love you, thank you so much, and I appreciate you so much. But those small ways, we don't need to use the word love, but we can use the words that make others feel that they're cared for. And that opens a door in them, gives them that feeling that you want them to feel, and you mean it. You know you're a wonderful person. You know how important you are. You can all of a sudden, some of them will just look at you, and then they go away with a smile. But it's just words. Love is a big word, but there are so many other ways you can share love, and people love you for it. And ask Norman and Nate. They've been through me.
Well, let me touch on that just a minute. People think they have to go somewhere to spread the gospel.
Did you want?
That they have to change. That they have to wear sackcloth. That they have to go into a dangerous part of the neighborhood. that they have to go out of their way. You don't have to do any of those things. You know, when I go out during the day, I'll touch bases with Spirit and I'll ask Spirit to slow me down. And as I look around, if I see somebody that I perceive could use an upliftment, a little bit of love, and then when I see that person, I used to run over them all the time and want to know why the Spirit wasn't using me. But you know, when I see that person, I automatically ask Spirit for help. I just say, you know, I'm going to go over and approach this brother and sister and just lay some love on them. And what I've found is maybe a third of the time, I'm as interested in what I'm telling them as I'm sure they are.
In other words, you let go and let God, and you feel that that's the adjuster speaking through you. You find that you are letting
Absolutely.
it come out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Spirit of God, and that broad Spirit of God is the Spirit of truth. It is the adjuster. It is, you know, they tell us not to divide it or chop it up or mix it, but I have a wonderful relationship with the local Universal Mother Spirit. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the Urantia book that doesn't blend quite fully. You know, we're told that we can get to know the Mother Spirit personally and be known by her. But at the same time, we're told that we're not supposed to spend a lot of attention to the division of deity. You know, so, but I love hanging out with Mother Spirit and the Spirit of Truth. Once you realize that every time you work with forgiveness, that you're only capable of doing that is partnering with Jesus. Once you realize that, you become conscious that you're walking with Jesus all the time, or a good part of the time. Once you realize that you can't love without God, you start to realize you're walking with God all the time. And so if you just slow down and ask, how can I touch this person? That answer will happen all the time.
Okay, question? Here.
Oh, I just wanted to say, you know, kind of go along with what you were saying, but if you have it in your heart to find or to just be on the lookout for people who need stuff, it'll happen, you know. I learned a lot from Marlene because she'd always be helping all these people all the time. And I was the kind of guy that 95% of the time I'm judging them, and I'm going, you know, anybody can get their life together. But by watching her, what happened is slowly but surely, the judgment guy, the guy that was intellectual all the time and said, if you had a job, you wouldn't be on the street. If you just changed your attitude, everything would change, all that kind of stuff, right? And I started being more like her, and I'm learning from her, actually. So I'm saying she really is a lover. There's no doubt about that. She's like you, Tom. But because of it, I start looking, and slowly but surely I'm creeping into this thing of caring for people. So this homeless guy, he was playing the guitar with my brother next door, and somebody stole his guitar. So I bought a guitar on Amazon. It's really nothing, you know, it's only, I mean, they had one like, I think it was like $70, and it had a case and everything else. And I gave it to him. Oh my God, he fell apart. He didn't know what to do. His whole life had changed because I gave him this $70 guitar. And the beauty I felt inside it was phenomenal. And I think you get more from doing something for somebody. And I'm not saying this because I'm going to say, oh, look at Pierre, he's a nice guy. He gave a guy $70. But it's what you feel, because if you're on the lookout and you really want to love, I mean, if you really do, there's a lot of people just, you know, I love you, brother, and they'll hug you and everything else. And, you know, you get this feeling like they're judging you or whatever. And then if you can overcome that and love them also, you know, and there's times in life when it's so easy to look at people and say, you know, you're not the kind of person I want to be friends with and all that. It's not easy to love, but once you overcome it, character builds.
Absolutely.
And doing that at one time, that's one of the great lessons of my life, is how this kid changed. I mean, he was like walking with his head down, and that disappeared. I mean, you know, I did something right once, you know.
I want to quickly address something before I forget it, because this is pretty powerful. we live in the future a lot. Eckhart Tolle says there are three types of people: people that live in the past, their ship came in, glory days, blah blah blah. People that live in the future, where they're waiting until this happens, when they win the lotto, if they get married. And then there are the people that live in the presence, in the present, because that's where God spends all of his time. The past is over, and the future is an illusion. No matter how much we prepare for it, things can happen. So what we're doing right now is irreplaceable. If we get out and do it, it's irreplaceable. And I'm going to jump to the future with you people real quick, because you guys understand this. Do you know, when we get to paradise, we're given the opportunity of creature trinitized being there. Two of us can get together, and if we come up, if a couple of us get together and we come up with a novel, unique, new concept within the Supreme, there's actually an essence that becomes from that. They say the great disappointment is when you try. The great disappointment is when you try to do it and you don't succeed. I'm here to tell everyone in this room that you have the seed for success now. You have unique opportunities to grow the Supreme, where planets settled in light and life, planets that have a perfect planetary prince, planets that haven't had an Adamic pair default. They're going through school, a lot easier school than us. Pretty much status quo. They've been culled into perfect little human beings. We are in an environment, if we get out and introduce God to the environment through us, if we'll do that because we're unique, because the planet we live on is unique, because the condition of the planet we live on is absolutely unique, we start to build that potential to add to the Supreme. So where I don't like going up here and saying, hey, look at the carrot. But I think it's important. I got a nudge in my grove one day that it's real important for all of us that have this revelation to get out and start living as though God was living through us in this environment. So anyway,
Okay. I got a quick question. When you approach someone, after all these years of your experience, are you able to discern thought adjustment, the presence of Jesus, or your seraphic angels close by, or do you find they work together? You tell us about that. What do you think of that?
No, I don't see the angels around them. I get nudges from time to time. What I do is I give them the benefit of the doubt that they're a child of God. Those that know me intellectually, I am a strong believer in five bangers. Dave and I might disagree about that, but a lot of people are just hitting on five of the adjutants. I don't know. Anyway, so setting that aside, I judge not, lest thee be judged. And don't cast your pearls before swine.
That's not the question. The question is, you personally, as a man, when you're driving and you suddenly turn right and there's your next person to talk to,
right?
What made you turn right? You must have reflected on that over the years. What is it that made you turn right? In other words, touch on your personal motivations. Are you able to identify what spiritual thing it is, if it is that at all?
Okay. Initially, it's not easy. I mean, initially, I'm going to share the gospel with somebody, and I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't really know what to say or how to do it. And so initially, it's like taking a deep breath, talking to friends about it, your Ranch book readers about it, how are we going to do it? And then, Robert brought up at our gathering, Robert brought up a thing that's awesome. Have you ever had somebody come up and say to you, how you doing? It doesn't happen often. But the moment somebody comes up and asks you how you're doing, they make the mistake of doing that. I've had it happen twice now, and I'll just smile at him and I'll say, you know, it's interesting that you asked that question. I just had a friend share with me that he thinks God's love and that he thinks that God lives in all of us. And what I do is I'll nudge or move on depending upon the interaction that starts. Up to the point of the interaction, I don't want to say it's terrifying, because it's really not. It's like anything else you do. If you think you're going to be a success at it right away, you're not. We learn in our failures. We don't learn in our successes, you know, but we have the courage. Courage. Encourage each other.
Next
So
question for Tom?
Yeah.
Tom, would you address the Yaya group and your work with the youth? Because all of us here are concerned about the future of the movement.
Okay.
Or lack of youth.
That's an excellent concern. I go all over the country. I meet with most of the societies, several study groups. We're an aging group. We don't attract the youth. I mean, we've got, you know, a couple of, three. You guys have more than the average as far as young people. You got Robert, David, and what was your name? I'm sorry.
Me? Elias.
I'm Tom. So I
This is Nate's son.
oh, right on. Okay, yeah. So you got some young people here. Phew, good for you. Most people don't. The Youth and Young Adult Committee, which we got finally as a standing committee in the fellowship. You know, I don't know where it's going. If you want me to get political a minute, I'll get political a minute. Our system's broken. If we were a business, we would be bankrupt. We have got the most incredible product on the face of the earth, and we're dying. The revelation isn't. But as an organization, we need to change. We need to change. I wish I had an easy fix. Maybe 20 years ago, I thought there was an easy fix, and I promoted it. I've been pushing us dealing with young people on their level, not on the Urantia book level, and it hasn't taken root. So what do we do? Boy, I wish there was a magic pill we could take. I think what's happening is you're seeing groups splinter off. It isn't like there aren't young people involved with the revelation. There are. They're out there. But we have not been attractive to them. How many times have you had a young person, new reader, come into your study group and you continue reading the paper that you're supposed to be reading? Let's say it's on universal unity, or it's on the personality, or it's on the foreword, and you just aren't, by God, this is what you're studying, and you're going to keep studying over and over and over again ad nauseum, and we don't get it. We get a new reader in, ask the new reader what they'd like to study. Change the subject matter, whatever you do, and talk about the individual's relationship with God. That's kind of complex, but it's easy to understand. It's pretty cool. You know, one of the Jesus papers that really portray what Jesus was all about. You change what you're doing anytime you're around young people, and we've never learned that skill. We just won't do it.
Questions for Tom?
But we could start at any moment. It's so late in the game. I don't know. I know, you know, Andrea, she can talk more. Tony's doing some work up at my place, and we talk about the Yaya committee and you know where it's at and what it's trying to do, and it's a challenge. It needs to be supported. You know, anything that you can do to support monetarily the Yaya committee, so that they can work hard to try to rebuild a youth base in this movement, is essential to creating a youth movement. So over the years, we've just made mistakes. We've made mistakes. And I don't know if we have the energy. I was 3 years on the general council, three years on the executive committee. I promised Michelle that I would work as hard as I could to get a standing youth and young adult committee, and that was my commitment to it. That got done, and there was too much other work that needed to be done, having to do with growing spiritually, I thought. So I loved the people, loved the time. It was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, but there was a lot of resistance towards doing anything with youth and young adults. And that resistance is still there. It's mollified a little bit, but it's like really, and so, yeah, we have more young people getting involved, which is good. Yeah, David.
Oh, I want to speak of something to that too. Hey, Jerry. So, I mean, one thing I guess not too many Ranch Book readers take into consideration too is that the fifth epical revelation is not a dispensational revelation. It is an epical, but Jesus is a dispensational revelation. Therefore, he is meant for all generations through all strand of time. The fifth epical revelation is adult food. The fourth epical revelation of the Master is bite-sized, small, chewable pieces, gummy bears that we can hand out to children of God, to those faint flickers of faith that are interested in knowing what the next step or the next question may be. And I think we attract people based off of how well we're able to deliver those bite-sized pieces. But when we bring them into a room full of intellectuals that discuss topics way far above and beyond their capability of interpreting, it's not attractive. And I mean, I know when I first started off, I reading the Urantia book, and my best friend had moved to Sweden, and I thought there was nobody else on the planet that read the Urantia book until I found Robert's group, and I started attending Robert's group. But what attracted me to the group was their willingness to gear the conversation towards my interests. And so, like Tom had said, they had found that the ability to bring it to my level and engage my interest, and then they watered that interest. And so I was very thankful to have Robert and Pierre and a lot of people that were in that study group, Kermit as well, to be mentors to me. And I think largely we take advantage of, or take for granted, the fact that our youth need mentors badly. I mean, we don't even have a proper understanding of a good fatherhood a lot of times, and most of us are raised without fathers. And so that broken home, it makes that transition from fatherhood, of understanding of a human fatherhood to a spiritual fatherhood, even that much more rugged. And so, I mean, it really comes down to the basics of understanding how to handle what that individual needs. There's some people who can't even ready for the Jesus epical revelation. They're still stuck in Macavent and Melchizedek on faith and trust. They have no faith and trust in God. So how can they go from there to the Master? Fear not. Now that's a big step for all of us to occur. And then to handle the epical revelation truth of the fifth epical revelation, those are rugged truths. I mean, if you were to sit there and teach prayer the way the fifth epical revelation describes it to somebody who's not ready for that, you could destroy their entire worldview. So there's I think, it teaches us that throughout our progressive training throughout the universes, we are to learn from the people directly in front of us and teach the people directly behind us. And if we can utilize that more, we will attract more youth, in my opinion.
Coming from the horse's mouth.
Exactly.
Thank you, David.
And Dave, one thing you brought to my attention is that proclaiming the gospel, the good news of the fact that Jesus simply said, love and serve one another, is proclaiming is the good news that we are to proclaim. And Jesus was the fourth epical revelation, and we tend to focus on the fifth epical revelation, which is the first three sections of the book. The fourth section of the book is the fourth revelation, the fourth epical revelation, and that is the gospel that we need to be proclaiming. The restatement of the. Say again?
I said there's people in this room that disagree with that
Okay.
philosophy.
Okay. Well, I'm putting in maybe my words what I heard from David, and that is in reaching the youth that gravitate to us in one way or another, or that we can reach in our own circle of influence, the message of the gospel of Jesus, the teaching, the simple truths that Jesus taught will resonate with them much more than what we like to get off into the universal things and the cosmic things and the things that many of us who had studied beyond maybe the New Testament in our religious quest are fascinated with. But we have to start with what the youth of the world can resonate with. And your message today, Tom, is so universally applicable and true that I'm very anxious to listen to view the video of this, because you've given us some wonderful tidbits to start with.
I'm glad I asked Tom, because being a more intellectual type, I knew the answer that I would have given because I've read it in the Urantia book. You know, God is your spiritual father, sends his spirit within your mind, and we're all spiritual brothers and sisters. That's intellectual. But Thomas doesn't immediately think of those words. He thinks of other ways of expressing that. And I think that there's something that we all need to learn about going from the mind to the heart. You know, what's the definition of love? You know, love is the desire to do good to others. I read it in the Urantia book. Now, how much of that have I actually, how many of you feel terribly loved when you're in my presence? It's a harder question.
We love you, Phil.
Oh, that was great, Phil. I'm in search of words. I love what you say, and I totally believe that that is our mission. And I was fortunate to learn one technique, and only one, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't learn more, but in my work of interviewing couples about their money, they come with great fears and embarrassment. They don't want to talk about it. They goofed. So anyway, there's not enough education in that area, so most people are not feeling very good about it. So I learned to just not say anything. I learned to create an open space and invite them to step into that open space and tell me everything. And I would just listen. And the most amazing things would come out. If I kept quiet, they kept talking. And the more they talked, the more they felt comfortable to talk. And I've had them tell me, you know more about me than my parents know. But they tell me all the things that they feel like they didn't do right, and that now they're in this pickle, and what should we do? And then we go on from there. But if I start out by being so totally silent, but I've just come to realize there's some kind of a quality to silence. There's silence, and then there's silence. The silence where I am 100% leaning forward, looking at them and eager to hear the next word. I can't even write on my tablet anymore. That's a distraction. So I have to try to remember. But the undivided attention is, there's something coming through that I can't say what the word is for it. Something comes through your eyes that makes them feel a certain way. And I wish I knew what it is, but it must be God, a form of God. But it takes a lot of concentration. You have to really concentrate and not get distracted until they're finished pouring out what they're pouring out. And I can't help but think there's something, even if we had the eyes to see it, it would be tangible. You could touch it. The thing that goes from one human being to another in that listening thing. Now, I wish I knew some words to say that would say God is love, but that's not the time to say that God is love in that particular environment. But I would love anybody who has discovered some good words that one can say that doesn't immediately make them turn on their heels and, oh, we got a God freak here, so let's go out. So I can't bring God into my financial planning conversation, but I can somehow bring God in by that total listening mode that I discovered a few years ago. And I'm really open to suggestions.
Awareness is God.
There must be some tangibleness to awareness.
You know, we're putting together a website. You know, we're new at this. We're doing half of it right, half of it wrong. You know, Pat, you know, we're new at this. You know, and so maybe we're overcorrecting the pendulums over this way a little too far. You know, I don't know if it's ever too far to turn our lives over to God. I don't know if that's ever in error. And but I do know that we're trying. We don't know. You know, and we've got a group of people. We're putting together a website that's going to be called Proclaiming the Gospel. We have proclaimingthegospel.org and .net. It's not a commercial business, so we didn't get that. And we're going to be sharing stories. We're going to be putting it's for readers of the Urantia book. I don't call myself a reader anymore. I think when those of us that title ourselves we're readers of the Urantia book, that's cool. I used to be a reader. I believe and I have faith, and I am a faith son of our revelation. I'm going to do everything I can in my life to radiate the revelation through me and my spiritual mentors to the rest of this world. Are we going to do it right first time? No. Second, third, fourth? No. But what we are doing is we've got a group of people now that are doing this, and they're sharing stories. And we're going to put it on the website. As far as the quotes, we'll have a ton of quotes that talk about the heart, that talk about service and the incredible need for it, talk about forgiveness, talk about love, values, meanings. Tons of quotes. I've been gathering them for about 4 years out of the Urantia book. Susan made me stop with these 8 or 9 that I had. I had a whole bunch of them, and she goes, "Really, Tom?" And I go, "Okay." And then we didn't even get to really most of them, but they're just an additional way of looking at things. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We need to be quiet. I want to say something. We need to wrap it up.
Okay.
We had a gathering in Kansas City in March, and there were 36 of us. And we got into different groups, and we discussed this topic as deeply as we possibly could. And what came out of it is a small community, because all 36 people aren't participating, but there are several people that are through email telling the stories of how they're spreading the gospel every day. Bill Cooper is a landlord, and he has someone who is dying, and she has children. We had another group on the way to the airport. They were able to minister to the taxi driver because his daughter died last year. And I understand that you want words, but Mother Teresa says, "I'm just the lead in God's pencil." God does the work. And if we're there and we're present and we're spiritually fragrant and we're listening, you know the anagram of of silence is listen. And so if we listen to people and we listen to them with love and we're very careful in our listening so that we can ask questions, we draw out of them what they need to say. And the thought adjusters are doing the work and the spiritual beings are doing the work. We're just opening up a door for them. So if you can remember that, it'll be very helpful, I think, less frightening. Now, from the gathering that we did in Kansas City, we're having a workshop or a gathering at the conference at IC17 to continue our work. And people from the gathering in Kansas City are going to be at this workshop, and we're all going to be participating, and we're going to share what we did. So I hope those of you that are going to IC17 and you're interested in doing your own kind of gospel, because we're all different, we all have different skills, no one's going to do it the same way, and we shouldn't. Just come to our workshop and help us continue the work that I believe is so desperately needed on this planet and what Jesus is asking us to do. She wants to thank Tom.
I just wanted to say before we end the meeting, Tom, I'm so proud to know you because you went through all the things you did years before, and you found a pathway that you felt you would be good at. You felt like you were directed to do this. And even though you had to learn how to do it and you're still learning, I want to say I respect you highly because you followed your thought, your desire. Is that all right if I say that? But I'm very grateful to know you and Susan.
This gentleman behind you has the last question here.
Here. Hey, just real quick. Remember when
I'm
Diane
not
was
a
telling
preacher.
us-
I'm not a teacher. I'm just a delivery boy.
Remember when Diane first started out and she said this is like Cheers, and then who walks in and we didn't yell, Norm.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, we did.
We said, hey,
Tom, can I ask you something off the mic? Are you going to be here after this?
I just have one easy question for you. Why did the church not continue, the one that you started, the Urantia kind of church?
There were a group of us who put a church together for almost 2 years in Seattle.
Say it again in the microphone.
Yeah, there were a group of us that worked really hard on putting a church together. We leased out a Unity church. They had their services in the at 9. We had ours at 11. We had a communal lunch afterwards. We had children's programs, and the first, probably the first gathering, we had about 150 people attend. Probably 50 some were Urantia book readers, and we had come to an agreement that we weren't going to make the Urantia book visible, and that agreement but the Urantia book became visible almost immediately, and from that point on, we had about 50 people coming with their kids, all Urantia book readers. And the lesson's this: we minister to the choir a lot. We spend a ton of time telling each other all the stuff we know, and the rest of the world kind of gets bumped around and lost. And I think that if somebody wanted to start a church that did not, a place of worship, a place of encouragement, a place of counseling, a place of putting love primary, and the information that we have, the simple information we have, I think they'd have a good chance. But if you're going to put a Urantia book in every pew, or if you're going to read out of it, you're going to end up with just Urantia book readers. And it's not a bad thing. We loved it. We had a great Sunday. But did we, and it lasted for about 2 years. But did we affect the neighborhood we were in? Did we affect anybody outside of the readers? No. The Urantia book is pretty formidable. It found you because you have the intellect and you have the potential to be incredible. and take that incredibleness that can only be defined by you turning your life over to God, to the rest of his children. That's why I think 1,000 of us came out of the woodworks. I think our job was to, in the Brotherhood, Constitution of the Brotherhood, tells us point blank, get the teachings of the Urantia book out. Teachings. The word study group is not in the Constitution of the Urantia Brotherhood or Fellowship. Never was. Doc Sadler, most of you don't know, he chaired the Education Committee and ordained almost 100 ministers and gave out certificates of learning, but they were old school and they pretty fundamentalist, and it died. But they tried. And I think if our organization wants to succeed, I think it needs to be about what our forefathers and mothers ask us to do, which is to get the teachings of the Urantia book out, however we can. Love y'all. Thank you for your time.